Okay. This all up. Okay. So you are Jonathan. So you are Jonathan Quash,
Yes, I am.
the director of the Men's Center,
Correct. Director of the Men and Women's Center.
the Men and Women's Center.
Correct.
I just first thing I want just a little bit of background. Like, where did you come from? Like, where were
I
you?
was born and raised here in New York, a graduate of York College,
A graduate of York College. Which year?
2005.
Okay, you're a York graduate, 2005.
Yes.
And in addition to that, you are also a performing arts professor. You run a gospel choir class.
Yeah, I teach the college choir. I also work with the theater department, and I'm the musical director for some of the productions there. And I also an instructor of music with the Department of Continuing and Professional Studies.
So, what got you into music? Which people would you say got you most interested into music when you were growing up?
Well, when I was younger, I grew up here in Rochdale Village, and so I attended what is now called Catherine Count Basie Junior High School. It used to be IS 72 years ago, and I began to study music in the choir at the school. And then there was a director there by the name of Joseph Thayard, so he got me interested in music.
So Joseph Fair got you to music?
Right.
And what did you think of Mr. Fair as a person?
As a person, I think it was great. He's a very strong and determined guy. He's very dedicated to music. We used to come before school because it wasn't a class or anything. We used to come before classes started, and then we, had rehearsals.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Sure.
So, did your parents also help you in your...
As a student, yeah, my parents helped me in school, but I didn't, they're not into music, so.
So he got you into music?
Yes, he got me into music.
So you are the director of the Men and Women's Center.
That's correct.
And what got you interested in the Men and Women's Center?
Well, I've only been director of Women's Center for a few months.
You were the Men's Center primarily.
Right, primarily the Male Initiative Program. The president of the college, President Keyes, appointed me director of the Male Initiative Program. Back when the program first started.
In when?
In 2005. The program began under the direction of a gentleman by the name of Larry Ratcliffe, but he retired a few months into the program, so then she appointed me. I had just graduated, so she appointed me director of the program at the time.
And why were you interested in becoming the head of the Men's Initiative Program?
Well, I did similar work in the community, plus I have some of my background is in dealing with youth and youth organizations, so she felt it was a good fit. Plus I was, young professor. I was able to have different students working with me, so she felt it was a good good opportunity for us to place a new person in front of in charge of the program.
What programs were you involved in your youth?
In my youth?
Obviously, you're still in your youth, but when
Not
you...
really. Well, in the community, you mean?
In the community.
In the community, I was the executive secretary for the Baptist Ministers Conference. I also worked with an organization called Christian Soldiers Foundation. I was the director of the music program there. I worked very closely with mentoring programs in the school, like with United Clergy for Empowerment. I also worked with a couple of schools in building programs, after-school programs for their kids, like music programs. So she felt that experience I was able to transition into this role pretty easily.
Dr. Keys. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Right.
What got you into these youth programs? Can you go along on a little bit, very long on that? Go deep into that?
It's not really much to go deep on. It's just, part of the things of what I wanted to do. That's just part of who I am in terms of getting involved and making resources available for people who don't have the opportunity to perhaps access or have benefit of certain types of programs on their own.
So you would say how would you describe yourself as a person?
Well, if I had to describe myself, it would it's a kind of good and a bad. I have lots of positives like everyone else, but some negatives. But primarily, I try to make sure I do all I can to help people. So there are there's pretty much no extent that I'll go to try to make sure someone, like students in this case, because we're working in a college, have access and the ability to succeed. So we try, particularly here in the center, we try our best to make sure all of the students that we work with are given the same advantages as everyone else. Like, doesn't matter whether, in other words, sometimes students have some disadvantages coming into the school or even trying to get into the school. So we try to make sure that those kinds of disadvantages are sort of leveled out a little bit, so that we don't, they're not sort of missing out on opportunities to come to college, or even when they get here to do well, just as well as other students. It could be from various ethnic backgrounds, could be from they living below a certain poverty line, or it could be that they live in transitional housing, could be a lot of different things. They're not prepared educationally for school, so we try to help them in various ways.
As a college student, what did you major in?
Music.
Music, okay. Yeah, kind of figured. And what were your interests while you were a college student? What did you do? Like, what were your interests? Were you part of choirs and?
No, I was just a music major and working. I wasn't a very active student. Aside from working in the theater, I played for a lot of the shows, even as a student. But I wasn't really very active on campus aside from that.
So what shows did you partake in?
Well, the shows in the theater, like some of the Callaloo shows. There was the Amen Corner, Tambourines to Glory, Mother Courage and Her Children, Charlie's Aunt. There's a lot of shows that went on. Unless you know the history of the theater, then you may not know what they are. But there's shows that have gone on every semester in the theater program since the building opened, and so I used to work with Professor Barbara Nicholas and Professor Sarah Schilling on playing for those shows.
So you're the head of the men's initiative program here at the college, and
yep.
I've spoken with you in the past about the issue of something related to men, but okay, let me not go down this road. What would you say has shaped your worldview?
My worldview? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think things that shape your worldview are your own particular politic, your culture, your own ethnic experiences. The same things that shape your worldview. and where you come from and where you've been and what you know.
Who were your influences growing up?
Well, I mean, my father was a huge influence in my life. I mentioned already Joseph Thayer.
Why would you say your father was a huge influence?
Well,
how did he affect your life? Obviously, how did he affect your life?
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, obviously being my father, but also in terms of being a great role model, an inspiration, motivator. Always held me to a very high standard that he asked me to meet, and always encouraging me to do the very best that I can, and still to this day does the same thing.
What kind of standards did he hold you up to?
In terms of being able to make sure I'm not only competitive, but I do better than others who perhaps are, in my class, if you will, or those who are around me.
How would you say your mother impacted you in terms of your?
Well, she did the same thing. They were equally motivating and inspiring and encouraging. That one doesn't outweigh the other. They both are very, very impactful in my life. The most impactful.
How would you say you were as a student? Were you I gotta guess you were a solid student.
I was an honor student in my major. In general ed, I did okay. I mean, I wasn't like I didn't graduate, 3.5 GPA, but I graduated with a 4.0 in my major, and I think overall did pretty well.
Were you the same in high school?
Well, in high school, I studied computer electronics. I didn't study music, so it was a different world.
How did you go from computer electronics to music?
Well, it's a long story. It's just because I
go into it.
Well, it's because I wanted to. That was my interest at the time, and ultimately music won. I had two interests, so I ultimately changed from building computers and programming to music.
Who got you into computers?
No one individual. It's just my interest. No one.
It was you got into it yourself,
right?
But how did you lose interest and make the change into music?
Just a decision I made. That's all. Same thing as when this morning I decided to wear this jacket, not another one. It's the same. Just a decision I made. That's all.
But do you still have an interest? You still have somewhat of an interest in that field?
In computers? No, I don't deal at all with computers or programming or anything like that.
Were you good at what you did?
It was okay. It was high school. I mean, it's not like you were making a living at it, so it didn't really. You just got grades. So in my classes, electronics and stuff, I did okay, but I was better at music than I was at computer electronics.
Okay, let me think of this for a second. Who would you say influenced you the most when it came to your political viewpoint on the world? Your political view.
I don't have any influences politically. I go by my own beliefs. I don't really follow any particular dogma when it comes to politics.
So you're politically independent?
In terms of by nature, yeah. I don't really. No one influences me politically. I'm not necessarily married to anything in particular.